With Cunha suspended for game week 28, Alexander Isak are out, and currently only 8 players in my team playing in blank game week 29. We got a lot to do with my team, and I will be discussing that in today's video alongside who to captain between Mo Salah and Cole Palmer. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure to drop a like in for 400, and if you can, drop a subscribe to the channel. Enough waffling, let's get on with the video. So first up, just for a little bit of context, here's how my team got on in game week 27 and the current crop of players that I own. The transfer that I made was in Dye to Cunha. I sold a injured player for one that now is suspended. Kind of the story of the season over the last few months, but 58 points and basically a grey arrow from 97.5k to 97k, but we will take that, and of course I'm putting that as a green arrow. Don't want to talk about the points, I've spoken about that in previous videos, but in terms of the player landscape for my team, really the issues are going to be Cunha suspended, not a good position, currently going to be out for the next 3 game weeks, but some think it could be extended for 4 game weeks because it is his second violent conduct offence. So we could see a situation where he might be out until game week 31, game week 32. Regardless, he's a sell. It's just whether he's a sell in this game week or in game week 29, and I'll discuss that when we come into my team selection. I think it's really important to understand that you don't have to sell Cunha this week. And also the big concern is going to be Alexander Isak. Now, we knew that he was blanking in game week 29 regardless. And I always had it in the back of my mind of maybe selling him as part of a transfer combination. The problem with Isak is, coming into game week 28, featured in the FA Cup game but came off late, and we are worried that he might have hobbled off with a potential injury. Now, we have no confirmation right now regarding Alexander Isak, but if he has any sort of doubt for game week 28, it's really difficult to imagine him being risked in that game, with the final being on Sunday. So we could see a situation with my team where I have no Isak or Cunha for game week 28, and then we start to get into a bit of problems with this team. Outside of that, I think the rest of the team looks okay. The problem, of course, as I mentioned, is I'm not free hitting in game week 29. And currently, the players you can see on your screen that blank in game week 29 include Munoz, Trent, we've got Mo Salah, we've got Isak, Cunha suspended, and importantly, Van den Berg is injured, and I do not see a world where he is back and available for game week 29. So we have got a bit of an issue, but regardless with that problem, I still don't think free hitting in game week 29 makes a lot of sense for my team, as I think I can field 11 players, and I will show you kind of my long-term plans in this video. But a recap, 58 points in game week 27. I want to touch on some of the hot topics now for game week 28 before coming into my team selection. Let me know in the comments, how many points did you score in game week 27? So I wanted to cover off some of the hot topics for game week 28. Now, in terms of captaincy and all, I'm going to cover that off later on in my team selection because it's relevant to my team, and naturally it will be for yours. It, of course, is Mo Salah versus Cole Palmer round 2, and I am looking forward to discussing that. But I've covered off 4 hot topics here. If there are any more, please do put them in the comment section. I'll be sure to get to them, and hopefully I'll cover off some others as we progress through this video. So first up, how would I rank the best Cunha replacements? And I just want to quickly touch on Cunha and Mateta in general here. So I think Cunha is way more of a desperate sell than that of Mateta. We got no update right now from Glasner what the status is of Mateta. If it's concussion, he will have to sit out game week 28. Then he blanks in game week 29. And then, of course, they have a great fixture away against Southampton in game week 30. So I think if you can keep Mateta and you're on a strategy of free hitting in game week 29, that just makes a lot of sense. But in terms of Cunha, I think he's a sell. The big thing is whether you do it now or in game week 29, as I previously mentioned. In terms of the best replacements for this game week, I would take Erling Haaland out of the 4 that you can see, and I would have it as Chris Wood number 1, Beto number 2, and Vissa number 3. Now, I think this is really good for this week because Aston Villa are in the middle of the first and second leg of the Champions League. So I think Vissa actually is fantastic. But after that, I don't love the fixtures. Away against Bournemouth in game week 29 doesn't scream a monster haul. Beto, I think, is cheap enough that you could do other stuff with the money. And I think that's the only reason why I would go to Beto. He's a 2 game week player, and then you'll want to either bench him or wildcard. That's the way it kind of lands with him. And in terms of Chris Wood, I think he is the obvious pick. Ownership's going to be massive in game week 29, and we know that if Forest are going to do well, usually Chris Wood does well. The reason why I got Erling Haaland as number 1 is because I don't think selling Cunha this game week is ideal. As I mentioned, Chris Wood against Man City, I could see him scoring, but could I see him hauling? Probably not. And equally, Vissa is great if you want to go there, but I do want to kind of put it out there that I think selling Cunha in game week 29 as part of a Haaland combination is actually a good way to go. And I would try and prioritise Haaland over any of the other forwards. And that kind of segues into the next section. Is Isak going to start? Is it time to sell him? Well, I, for one, think his minutes, regardless, are going to be very, very ropey. Callum Wilson's back from injury. They play on the Monday night, and then the EFL Cup final is the Sunday. I just don't see a reason why they have to massively risk Isak in that game. Eddie Howe probably won't give us any advice. My advice to you guys is go into this game week with the understanding that he probably is a huge risk. And I probably will start him if you have a good first sub. And the reason being is, again, I don't think selling Isak this week is good. I think the only reason you're going to sell Isak is either to get Chris Wood in or to do a Haaland combination. But in order to get to Haaland, you probably have to sell one of Salah or Palmer, who have Leicester and Southampton at home for their rug teams. So you're not going to be doing that. So I think the best thing to do with Isak is keep, hope for the best, and sell in game week 29 to bring in Erling Haaland if you favour that route. In terms of free hitting in game week 29, should you do it? Well, I think you should if your team is 8 or more blank game week players. I think that is too much for you to do free transfers unless you are sat there with loads in the bank. Then yes, that is a decision to have. However, if you're in a position where you only got 5 or 6 blank game weekers, I would consider trying to go through that game week without the free hit and keep it for blank game week 34, which could help you navigate that period where there's a double in 33 and a blank in game week 34. So I think that's the preference for me. But of course, it is team dependent. If you're sat there with loads of Palace, loads of Newcastle, loads of Liverpool, free hitting in 29 might be better for your team. And finally, I think we've all forgotten about the assistant manager chip, but people still have it active. And if you do, I think we have an amazing opportunity this game week for a table bonus manager. Now, of course, there's loads of fixtures that you can consider, but I think now we understand managers with table bonus is probably the route to go for with this chip. And Graham Potter versus Newcastle just screams 20 points. I'm going to be honest. It's a table bonus opportunity. Newcastle have so many injuries. Lewis Hall out, Botman going for a scan and potential surgery, Gordon suspended, Isak a possible doubt. And we need to remember, regardless even if they play a decent team, their minds are going to be on that Sunday final, whereas West Ham are still under a new management who are trying to get things going. And I think this screams a 20-pointer for Graham Potter. So if you have it available, I wouldn't be activating my assistant manager chip. But if you are still in the second or third week, Graham Potter is your man. Any other hot topics, let me know in the comments. I'll be sure to get to them before we wrap up this video. So here's my game week 28 team selection, kicking things off with, of course, the goalkeeper and defenders. And a reminder, I've still got one free transfer available, 0.3 million in the bank, and I'm planning on not free hitting in game week 29, just for a little bit of context for those watching. So in terms of the goalkeeper, no debate. Pickford away against Wolves, and this actually looks better than what it first looked like. Of course, with Cunha now being suspended, I think probably people are now thinking Wolves are doomed. I don't think that's the case at all. I still think they're a good team under Vitor Pereira. I think they do have a chance of winning or scoring in this game, but Pickford away against Wolves doesn't look as bad now, so I'm fine with that. It doesn't look like Fabianski is getting that number 1 shirt back in the team, so Pickford until a wild card is going to be my boy between the sticks. In terms of my back three, pretty content with it. Munoz at home against Ipswich, one of the most bought players going into game week 28. Those differential points are losing out each and every week, but I'm just delighted that I've had him for quite a while now, and he has delivered each and every game week. Trent at home against Southampton, it is what it is. If we see rotation off the back of that PSG game, we just got to put our hands up and say that it was part of it. For me, I think he is still going to start. If he gets 65 minutes and locks in that clean sheet, I am happy with that considering the circumstances. And then Gabriel away against Man United. Now again, Arsenal have been really odd over the last couple of months, but could I see them keeping a clean sheet against one of the worst attacks in the league? Absolutely. And could we now see the return of Gabriel scoring from set pieces? I hope so. So in terms of defence, no real concerns. Obviously, Vandenberg on the bench last because he is currently injured, and Mikolenko away against Wolves, which, worst case scenario, I don't think is a disaster him coming into the team with that Wolves game. So in terms of transfers, nothing to be done in the goalkeeper or defender department. Moving into my Game Week 28 midfielders, and as you can see, no plan to make a transfer in any of these sections. So we got the double Bournemouth away against Spurs. Now, Semenyo, I'm always pretty content with the minutes, but I don't love him as a pick. But he's been in the team for a while. And the thing that we need to understand with the Bournemouth fixture against Spurs is that they, of course, have Europa League either side of this fixture. So Thursday night, they've got the first leg, and then they've got the second leg the following Thursday. So it is a quick turnaround for Spurs. And historically, we have seen that off the back of Europa League games, Spurs haven't been fantastic. Now we take into account that they're actually in a part of the competition where they actually are having to try. I mean, in the group stages and all, it wasn't necessarily tough all the time. This is now the focus for Ange, and I do think Bournemouth are going to come into this fixture thinking we could score a few goals against this Spurs team. So I don't mind the Bournemouth double up. Am I slightly concerned about Clive at minutes? Not really. Am I concerned about an early substitution? Yes. And that is unfortunately the case now with Clive. But is it enough for me to sell either of those players? Absolutely not. And I still think they are great picks for Game Week 29, which is going to be that blank game week. Mbeumo at home against Aston Villa. Again, I think this is actually a better fixture than what it first looks like. Villa defensively been really poor all season now. I think we can come to that conclusion. And importantly, Villa played their first leg in the Champions League. Not ideal that they won 3-1, but regardless, we know that they are still having focus on that second leg the following week. So I think this is a good fixture for Mbeumo once again at home against Aston Villa. I think there could be an opportunity for goals in that game. And Mbeumo, of course, playing in blank game week 29, he is sticking around until a wildcard, really. And then we got the two big guns. Again, why am I even talking about them as a potential transfer? But, of course, we have two debates. Captaincy, which we'll touch on at the end, and when possibly to sell them. So, Palmer at home against Leicester. Now, Palmer's now being included in the Europa or the Conference League squad for Chelsea. So we could actually see him play on Thursday. But with Chelsea not having any fixtures in this FA Cup weekend, I see no reason why Palmer wouldn't play 90 and 90. I just don't think that's a concern. And of course, with Cole Palmer after that, he has Arsenal in game week 29 and then some okay fixtures beyond that. But I do think there is an opportunity to sell him, but definitely not this week. And in terms of Mo Salah, even more interesting because, of course, PSG, what a tough game that was. And we could see Mo Salah having limited minutes against Southampton in preparation for the second leg at Anfield. That is not going to be an easy game for them. But is it enough for me to not captain Salah? We'll talk about that. In terms of selling him, I think there is going to be more momentum to do so. A blank in game week 29, and then in game week 30, they have Everton when other managers might have Erling Haaland. I think the captaincy goes to Erling. So we'll discuss that in a bit more detail. But as of now, the midfielders are locked in for game week 28. So moving into my game week 28 forwards, and I spoke about the concerns about Isak, the suspension of Cunha. So what do you do in that position? You roll your transfer. That is my current plan. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I will explain. So Visser at home against Aston Villa, perfectly fine. We spoke about Villa being sandwiched between the first and second leg, so I'm really happy to have a double up in that Brentford attack. Perfect. Now, of course, we have the issue. Cunha, first and foremost, I spoke about how he is a desperate transfer out. And in my previous video, the transfer plans, I spoke about how Chris Wood's ownership is going to be monstrous in game week 29. But with his fixture in game week 28 against Man City, I actually think it's a good fixture. Others think it is going to be a tough game. It will be a tough game, but the way I think about it is, can Chris Wood score 2-3 goals in that game? I don't think it's a mega haul game. I think he definitely could score one, and all it takes is one goal for him to get a 9-pointer. But is it enough for me to use a precious transfer to sell Cunha to Wood when I know I have a huge debate to be had in game week 29 about whether to bring in Erling Haaland or not? I think the answer is going to be no. Now, I'm obviously taking a risk with value probably dropping in Cunha quite quickly, so it might force my hand to make an early transfer in game week 29 as part of a combination move. But I just don't think the upside is there for me to bring in Chris Wood in game week 28 in isolation. So the team looks like this. Isak, I'm taking a huge risk. Of course, if we hear news that he's out, the thing that I want to say is I could even then still roll my transfer. Again, the real forward that I want is Erling Haaland. And Mykolenko coming in away against Wolves, if Isak doesn't play a minute, isn't a terrible position to be in. It's not ideal, but loads of people are going to be in a similar boat with Isak. And I just don't see a situation where I force my hand to make a forward move this week. I think I want to keep those transfers in the back. go to game week 29 with 2 free transfers, and if Haaland gets injured against Forest, then suddenly it's an easy move for me to do, avoid Man City attack or maybe bring in Marmoush. So for that reason, I'm going to stay patient. I'm going to roll my transfer, even though it sounds a bit ridiculous, and just set myself better for game week 29, where I think it is way more of a priority than the fixtures that are presented in front of me in game week 28. Let me know your thoughts right now, what you're doing with Isak. I think you definitely can sell him, but who is that forward that you're going to is the big question. I, for one, want to give myself an easy Haaland route, and that is going to mean keeping Isak. Finally, we're going to talk about captaincy, so let's get into that. So, captaincy is very, very interesting this week. Now, currently the captaincy I'm just going to put out there is on Mo Salah, but I am honestly 51% Mo Salah, 49% Cole Palmer. Now, it is really interesting when we come to decisions with FPL. If Cole Palmer scored 2 of those big chances that he had against Southampton, I think people would be steaming into Cole Palmer once again with a home fixture against Leicester. Now, let's weigh up a few pros and cons here. So let's take Cole Palmer in isolation. The pros is that he has a fantastic game at home against Leicester. Yes, he does play in the Europa or the Conference League on Thursday, but because they've had a week's rest, I think we all anticipate Palmer's minutes to be better than that of Mo Salah's. So fixture is great. Minutes are going to be great. We know he's on penalties and he's the talisman of that Chelsea team. Even though he has been poor over the last month, I still back him as a player. The problems: Chelsea's a team, very unpredictable. We don't really know. And of course, if they do lose that first leg against Copenhagen, are they going to have their minds on the second leg? Potentially. So I think there's a lot of fear about Cole Palmer because managers got burnt in game week 27. They're scared to go back there. Of course, with Mo Salah at home against Southampton, I would argue is a better fixture than Leicester. It's probably the only fixture in the world that could be better than Leicester at home. The pros for Mo Salah, just an absolute consistent monster. Even if he gets 60 minutes against Southampton and the game's wrapped up, you'd anticipate he has been involved in those goals. And he's just a beast. The downside, PSG are good. And they are going to have an eye on that second leg to get the job done, even though they are 1-0 up. But is there much rotation in this Liverpool team to allow themselves to bench Mo Salah? I don't know if there is. So I think there are a lot of reasons to go for Cole Palmer this week. And I think your main reason for going Cole Palmer is that you think Mo Salah is going to be benched. Because if you think, oh, he probably will start, I don't see the argument to go for Cole Palmer. I think Mo Salah's fixture is amazing. Both teams are playing midweek and then have a second leg in their respective competitions. And if that is the case and you think both players play, I think Mo Salah is the one to go for. I just think the fixture is so good. And I don't see how Southampton don't concede 2 or 3 goals. I think Chelsea could equally score 2 or 3 goals, but I just find it difficult to go against Mo Salah this game week. I had my opportunity in game week 27. I was delighted with the decision. The outcome's the outcome. This week, I can't see myself going against Mo Salah unless Arne Slot for some reason says we're going to have to rotate the team in preparation for the second leg. Then that might scare me, but as of right now, Mo Salah is my captain. Let me know yours in the comments. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's video looking at my Game Week 28 team selection. Now, I'm going to let Game Week 28 pan out, and then we are really going to go in on Game Week 29 plans because I wanted to do a bit of a deep dive on my transfers, but honestly, I can't really predict Game Week 29, hence why we're not going to future plan. We're going to do that literally the moment Game Week 28 ends. So I hope today has provided a bit of value. If you have any further questions, please do pop them in the comment section. I'll be sure to get to them. If you did enjoy the video, please do consider dropping a like and smashing that subscribe button. And I will see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.